Today we are going to discuss China and world economy. China is one of the fastest growing economy in the world with growth rate averaging over 6% per annum during last 30 years. The share of China in the world trade is about 14%. It has a GDP of 14.3 trillion US dollars in 2018-19. China spends nearly 9% of GDP on infrastructure. In 2013, she launched a massive initiative called the One Belt One Road Initiative (OBOR), which was renamed as Belt and Road Initiative. It is a land-based economic corridor will build ports, railways and pipeline in the mission mode. It is one of the largest infrastructure projects in the world and China is expected to spend nearly 150 billion US dollars a year to link various countries along the old Silk Road with Europe. It had a participation of about 68 countries, accounting for 60% of the world's population and 40% of the world's GDP. These figures give an idea of massive scale on which China has undertaken this initiative. What are the objectives of BRI? It is the centerpiece of China's foreign policy and domestic economic strategy to establish her as a global economic superpower. The projects involve infrastructure development and investment in different parts of Asia, Africa and Europe, and it is likely to be completed before 100th anniversary of People's Republic of China in 2049. Currently, the entire focus for the Chinese economy is on completing the BRI. For this purpose, the policy coordination, intergovernmental cooperation, macroeconomic policy and communication mechanism are ensured in a mission mode. Why India not part of a BRI? China is selling its political proposition as a new pathway for global growth, solidarity and development. China's outward expansion through the construction of new supply chains and trade routes has been designed to serve its economic interests by capturing the flow of raw material from Asia, Africa and Europe. Thereafter, supplying finished products to the world. India is skeptical about this. There is a trust deficit between the two countries and therefore India has refused to sign the BRI. As the British packaged their imperial design as a show of benevolence that the railway in India, just as an example, were being built to benefit Indians, so does China too. The fact remains that BRI passes through the disputed POK, that is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. As a result of this, India has raised objection to the BRI passing through POK. As a response to China's initiative, India has launched its own project called the Project Mausam and Sagarmala to counter the Chinese inclusion. India is in a much better position compared to other countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Myanmar. China plays a role of big brother, a sort of, to many countries and somehow made them agree to accept the infrastructure project and investment. Now China is doing a lot in those countries. China's entry into WTO is relevant in this context. An important landmark with regard to Chinese economy is their entry into the WTO in Doha round of negotiation on 17 September 2001. China became 143rd member of WTO on 11 December 2001. This was culmination of 15 long years of negotiation, especially with the United States, which were started in 1986. There has been a huge benefit to China because of her entry into the WTO. China's export increased from just 2.7% in 1995 to 13% in 2016. This is a phenomenal increase. China is also a land of opportunity. Around 200 transnational corporations have entered China to get the benefit of cheap labor, freedom to hire and fire, which does not exist in India and many other countries. Flexible labor laws, low tax rates, low tariff rates on electricity, absence of bureaucratic interference are some of the factors that make China an attractive business destination. China has made concerted effort to contour and leverage the global data economy for itself. By its technological prowess, ranging from building next generation communication, infrastructure, digital platform to offering surveillance tool to authoritarian governments, China is well positioned to script future administration and regime around development, finance and even war and conflict. Why US agreed to China's entry in WTO? This is very important and $1 million question. Successive US governments and the Western world played a crucial role in bringing China into the global community, culminating in Bill Clinton's decision to welcome China into the WTO system. The strategic thinking behind the US and Western world to enable China to enter the global community had two main reasons. First is full on engagement with Beijing would alter the opaque nature of Chinese politics, making it more liberal and open. Second is China will offer big market and big business to the Western world and the US. The subsequent outsourcing of manufacturing and industrial capabilities from the West to China allowed Beijing to bid its time as it strategically built its influence through control over global supply chain. Because of the enormous financial returns accruing from labor arbitrage, government turned a Nelson eye to Chinese endeavors. China used this economic dependence to flex its political muscle first in Asia and now through the Belt and Road Initiative into the very heart of European Union. There is no single trade policy initiative that has resulted in larger gains in international trade than China's entry into the WTO. The hyper-globalization process that was steadily building up China's industrial might were simultaneously causing enormous social and political churn among the Western working and middle classes. The onset of COVID-19 pandemic has quickly buried the postulate made by US and the Europe. The free and open liberal world trade has run into rough weather. The intense engagement with China failed to alter its politics. Comparison between India and China. On comparing the two countries, both India and China's GDP growth rate have been twice that of global growth rate for last 20 years. In both the countries, demographics have been a key driver of growth. And let us remember the main difference between the two countries. While it is participatory multi-party democracy in India, it is the absence of democratic institution and one-party regime in China. So these two countries are in that sense not comparable, and China is answerable to none. The economic reform process started in China in the year 1978, and these were based on the well-charted strategy. In contrast, the reform process in India started in 1990-91, which were triggered by a crisis of sort when she was in dire straits. India did not have enough foreign exchange to meet our import bill for more than 2 weeks, not enough money to serve our debts. We had to pledge our gold reserves. Inflation was galloping at 17%. Therefore, one can say that economic reforms in India were driven by management of crisis. According to Milton Friedman, only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. Our basic function is to develop alternatives to existing policy, to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes politically inevitable. Comparison between US and China. In the past, the US leveraged its pole position in the global economy, its military and industrial strength, and its technological supremacy to build a world order that responded to its interests. There is, however, no equivalence between the two. While there are checks and balances in the US in the form of being a democratic society, conditioned by electoral cycles, largely an open society and freedom of media, no such thing exists at all in China. It is worth recalling that at the peak of its might, the US withdrew from Vietnam because of intense media scrutiny dramatically undermined political support for the war. Will images of the damage of the livelihood and ecology along the Mekong convince the Communist Party of China CPC to abandon its damming project upstream? Will the thousands of deaths caused by COVID-19 within and outside China make it more transparent? The answer is certainly in negative. Therefore, the next globalization era, increasingly unwritten by Beijing, may well be less free and less open than before. To balance China's global ambition, other countries may choose to trade only with the geographies and nations where political trust exists, thereby fragmenting supply chain. Indeed, we should be ready for a new phase of gated globalization. The current global pause induced by COVID-19 offers a moment to reflect on the contours of the China's strategic emergence.